Top 5 things to remember about online accessibility. There are 4 main accessibility categories that must be considered when designing and building digital content, which include visual, auditory, muscular, and cognitive. Technology considerations for each of the 4 categories include screen readers, braille displays, speech-to-text software, keyboard controls, captions, transcripts, and UDL principles. When we develop instructional content that is not accessible, we essentially create barriers for students. We prevent them from being able to move forward in their educational journey. Do you remember being a kid and seeing someone do something you wanted to do, but the other kids never let you be a part of the group? The barriers created when content is not accessible essentially lead to students being excluded from the learning process, which can have multiple emotional effects on students. There are 2 goals associated with building accessible content. The first is to allow students to be able to learn independently. Unlike print-based textbooks and worksheets, digital content can be made accessible fairly easily if you follow the basic steps we are going to discuss in this presentation. The second goal associated with building accessible content is that we create things that allow students to enjoy a learning experience that is comparable to that of their classmates and peers. That may mean that things are set up a little differently technology-wise, but that the students are all working towards meeting the same educational goals and objectives. Before we jump into the 5 main areas of focus associated with creating accessible digital content, I want to first take time to debunk one of the most common myths that gets associated with accessibility. The need for accessible content is not directly related to cognitive ability. In other words, these students are enrolled in all types of courses at all different levels of those courses. Making text accessible. Color should not be used to emphasize text. Instead, bold and italics can be used along with title and heading styles. Underlining should be reserved for hyperlinks, and paragraph text should use a standard font style that is at least size 14. Configuring text correctly allows students to use keyboard controls only to navigate through the content. Examples of students who use keyboard controls only include those who might use screen reading technology or those that use speech-to-text or text-to-speech software. When using images for instructional purposes, there are 2 main accessibility concerns you must remember. The first is alternative text or alt text. Alt text is a brief statement that explains the purpose or use of the image. When you do not add alt text for an image, most technology tools automatically insert the name of the file into the alt text area. When that happens, all a student who relies on screen reading technology gets is the actual name of the file as opposed to the instructional purpose for the image. When using images for instructional purposes, the second main accessibility concern you must remember involves embedding text on images. While tools like Canva and other similar options allow you to create real eye-appealing instructional graphics for your students, the text in those images cannot be picked up and read by screen reading technology. So rather than getting the instructional content you are attempting to share with your students through the eye-appealing content you are creating with text embedded in images, students who rely on screen reading technology are only getting this message. Of course, we are not saying that you cannot use those tools. However, we are saying that if you choose to do so, you should limit their use and that you will need to create a plain text document to accompany those images. Hyperlinks should be set to open in a new window, should not include phrases like click here or here, and should include the actual name of the file or document. This impacts individuals who might use screen reading technology or those that use speech-to-text or text-to-speech software. Tables should be inserted as plain text and not as images. Avoid using tables strictly to add visual appeal. Columns and rows should have headers and cells and should not be merged or left blank. Videos that have speaking parts require time-coded captions. Videos that do not have speaking parts require audio descriptions. Depending on the contents of the videos, some may require both captions and audio descriptions. Transcripts are also very helpful for both types of video. Audio files require transcripts. By addressing these 5 main concerns when developing digital content, we can help to ensure students who require assistive technologies, like the braille display shown in this picture, can interact with the instructional content independently. We can ensure all students who interact with our courses have access to the information they need in order to be successful throughout their educational journey. And rather than excluding individual students because they may have a visual, hearing, muscular, or cognitive impairment, we can ensure that everyone has a seat at the table and that all students are given the opportunity to interact and learn online in a way that is comparable to their peers.